next one is, again, an online keynote presentation by Anatoly Motkin. He is the founder and president of StrategEast. He's from US, and this session is going to be moderated by Veqar Islam, our dear old friend from JBS. Please welcome Veqar Saab on stage as a moderator. And we would like to have the next online presentation.
Hello.
I must say, as we are about to start this session, that Veqar Saab has been a tremendous help to the CIO Summit since its inception. He has been with us. I just have to ask him, sir, can you do this for me? And I have never heard a no. कि नहीं यार ऐसे कर लेंगे ऐसे कर लेंगे ऐसे कर लेंगे, but he's always there for us. So I must say thank you so much, Veqar Saab. Okay, over to you now.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. So it is an interesting topic that we'll talk about with Anatoly Motkin. Anatoly, as Kamran said, is founder and managing director of StrategEast. Many a times when we talk about technology, we talk about the technology itself, and these days the buzzwords are AI, blockchain, big data, machine learning, chat GPT, it seems, is overtaking the world. So, it is those kind of discussions, but rarely we talk about the impact of technology and how it is changing and shaping the future of the world. So this session is more about, not necessarily about technology, but how technology is going to shape the world. And many of us would, vouch with me when I say technology has already impacted all of us in a big way. And while we all must confess in a very sad tone that a country like Pakistan, where unless you are forced towards technology, you are quite averse to technology. So we only adapt technology when when it is forced upon us. Otherwise, we want to keep away from it, and that's why a majority of our economy is still undocumented and still not part of the technology ecosystem. But even then, in a country like Pakistan, how much our life has changed and evolved over the last decades. Forget 3 decades or 3 decades plus that I've been part of this industry. I'm talking about industry in the last decade. And I'll just share a very interesting conversation that took place in my own home. So I have, mashallah, 5 sons, and I have a full span, 31 years to 15 years. And my youngest is, 16, and my number 4 is 21. So a difference of almost 5.5 years. And 3 months ago, they were having a discussion amongst themselves, and it was an argument. And finally, the 21-year-old told the 16-year-old that I can't relate to your generation. So 5.5 year difference, and we're talking about generation gap. In our time, this used to be 30 years, 35 years. All of this has happened because of technology. Your social lives have changed. Your social interactions have changed. Many of the people that I see in the crowd are still on their mobile. But that's the way they interact. They can listen and they can still chat. Many of the people, if you look around, everything today is a software. Everything. And I don't care what. Your wallet is a software. Your car is a software. Your airline is a software. Your shopping is a software. Banking is a software. Cash is a software. Anything you do is software. And because it is software, it has a direct impact on it. So I had an interesting conversation with Anatoly 2-3 days ago where we said, how do we shape it up? And Anatoly was very eloquent, as you will hear, and he said, I'll not talk about technology, I'll talk about how technology is going to change us in every sphere of our lives. If you think it has done enough, think again. think how it will shape the next 5 to 10 years. So I'll let Anatoly take over from here for the next 7 to 10 minutes. He will do a keynote. He will talk about the governance structures and how technology will shape the future. I'll then have few questions from Anatoly, and then we'll go to the audience, and you can have another 10 minutes of Q&A so that then we can conclude the whole conversation. So Anatoly, over to you, and thank you so very much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today, and it's a huge honor. I really regret that I'm not able today to be in person in Karachi. Hopefully next time. And indeed, we've discussed that technology is far beyond the pure, let's say, applied facilities that it could carry. It's also a social game changer, and not only economic game changer. So I suggest to look on a region that I know a little bit better, is a region of Eurasia or post-Soviet states out of Russia. And these countries were a failed state, all of them, including Russia, just 32 or 33 years ago, or 32 years ago, when the Soviet Union fell apart. And the only thing they had is a high level, besides the natural resources, they had a high level of fundamental studies. And some of those countries, like Belarus, like Ukraine, they took it forward. And they decided that let's take our engineering capacity and let's start looking how we could use it to become integrated into the global supply chain. And then countries like Belarus, again, countries like Ukraine, they started working with international customers, mainly in the United States, mainly in Europe, working on providing or developing the digital solutions for them. But the outcome of this was not only the new sector that generates exports for those countries, but also those who are engaged or they're part of this industry, the IT industry in those countries. They started working with international customers, with international companies. So suddenly you've had companies in those countries who were working according to best global corporate practices. Moreover, when you look on them and you look on a person who earns, and the average salary in Belarus and Ukraine for IT specialists is $2,500 a month. You could imagine easily somebody else in any other sector who generates $2,500 a month, who, for example, trades with lipsticks. I don't know. But their mindset is absolutely different, because those folks are more responsible. Those folks know how to do things on time. They're not looking for excuses. They're looking for solutions, which is very rare for that region that I'm describing. So for a sudden, you had additional sector that generates human capacity or talents for the authorities, for the government. For a sudden, in the beginning of 2000s, when beforehand they were looking for potential deputy ministers or talented deputy ministers who were educated in some, I don't know, presidential academies, they started looking for folks who come from IT sector because they know how to get the things done, how to get integrated with other countries or with their colleagues who work in other sectors. So for a sudden, you took countries who used to be failed states, who were heavily dependent on their natural resources and old-fashioned industry, and you look on Belarus, who started generating $3 billion a year, $3 billion a year, country of 10 or 9.5 million people, and it grew up from, some could say nothing, but I could say from knowledge-driven economy. And moreover, if you look on natural resources, you understand and you know well that countries compete with each other. The strong thing about the IT and the technologies and the knowledge-driven economy, that the success there is based on collaboration. It's based on synergy. And it also allows you to resolve issues in the countries which are landlocked, or some countries like Uzbekistan, which are double landlocked. They need to cross 2 borders to get to a sea. And you're not dependent on your territorial obstacles. Moreover, one more thing. many international institutions and development agencies are struggling to resolve different issues of a modern world. Gender inequality, inequality of rural area in the capital, and many, many others. And it's just fantastic that developing the IT industry in developing countries, you are able automatically, almost as a byproduct, to resolve those issues. Because they're just embedded into DNA of the IT industry. Even the corruption, look on Ukraine. Today, it's a country that is invaded by Russia, but beforehand, we were hearing about Ukraine, some other countries, because of the corruption in those countries. But corruption is possible when actually I am dependent on the government. I need from first time the IT industry became the only sector in those countries, even in the most authoritarian among them, that the, let's say, the authoritarian leaders became dependent on the smart guys. Because actually, if they don't feel comfortable, those IT specialists, they could move elsewhere. And it proved itself as actually viable many, many times. So actually, it's win-win. The country preserves the sector, but the sector embeds into itself gender equality, equal opportunities, let's say transparency, accountability, rule of law, private property protection, and all these values grow up from specific sector. But today, you couldn't imagine a single sector or any other sector of the economy which doesn't have tech at the end. If it's agriculture, it's agri-tech, it's finance, it's fintech. So substantially, the norms and values of the IT, of transparency and equal opportunities, actually leak to all other sectors and make them healthier. But also, one of the, I'll try to summarize and not to keep you too long. So two things. One, this sector, the IT sector, it provides the better opportunities for each country and country, but the synergy provides an opportunity to create new, let's say, alliances between countries which are even not close by to each other. So it allows also to preserve the human capital in the country. And you know well better than I do that you have a big country with smart people, but not all of them have an opportunity to earn fair wages in Pakistan. And I meet guys from Pakistan in Dubai, in Qatar, in many other places. If they would be able to earn fair salary in their own country, they will never leave. Don't forget that each IT specialist it makes a whole like overall contribution to the economy, not only to his family. Each IT specialist generates 5 more jobs. Let's say construction builder, taxi driver, waitress in the restaurant. So each IT job that you create, you actually create 6. And that's important. So just a last summary. Now we see that, for example, Caucasus and Central Asia, the regions that are, again, they were former Soviet territories, but they have high level of IT proficiency there. They now have an opportunity to work together with the Gulf states, because the Gulf states need high level of IT expertise, and these countries are looking for customers. Just an example, the same could work with Pakistan. It already works with Pakistan. I know that you have over 1 million IT specialists, but I actually think that that's the future of your country, because definitely we need agriculture, we need to eat, but also we need to any sphere of life to be more sophisticated, and it's up to ourselves. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Anatoly. Very insightful, and Anatoly brought about a few very insightful points on how technology can solve problem, and how collaboration between countries, and for that matter between companies as well, will become that much more prevalent once you move towards technology. I mean, those of us who belong to my generation would remember the term competition and cooperation. And then the term evolved as technology came in, cooperation, which means sometime you cooperate, other time you compete, right? And now this has become more or less compulsory as organizations are scaling. Organizations are dependent on their competition to scale and not just compete with them. And same is going to be with the country. So he talked about collaboration. He also talked about how IT creates job, contrary to many of the people here belong to the IT industry, but contrary to the common belief that if we go technology route, or unemployment will rise. It is actually the other way around. Every time you create an IT job, you create 6 more jobs. And that's, again, proven by data, right? There will be, old skills will definitely be unemployed, but there will be a lot more new skills needed. And I'll give you an example, and he talked about human skills. Today, it is estimated that in Pakistan, just the freelance community, and of course we don't have documented numbers, but the freelance community, which is either doing technology work or using technology to earn independently, is over 1 million people. Now, these 1 million people few years ago were available to the job market. Today, they are more or less entrepreneurs, independent, do things on their own, earn, by the way, in foreign exchange as well, which we all know is quite scarce these days. We are all looking for dollars, can't find them, right? But they have it, because they earn in foreign currency. So Anatoly, if I may, ask 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll open it to the audience. How do you think in developing economies like Pakistan, you talked about, of course, transparency and corruption, or mitigating it, but how do you think technology will shape the future of governance, especially in developing economies like ourselves? So how do you see that moving ahead in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, thank you for that. I think 5 to 10 years, it's very distant horizon of planning because, today the things may move much faster. But getting back to your question, the technology contributes to the good governance in 2 ways. In purely technological, as a technological tools, when, for example, in Ukraine, you have a governmental procurement, a digital procedure that actually and actually there is no space for corruption there. And governmental procurement is always a huge space for corruption. But on the other hand, you also have a big space of those who were working for 10 years in an environment which is absolutely free of corruption and any back payments. And once they become those who will be acquired by the government to work with the governmental institutions, they actually bring with them absolutely new and fresh DNA. And they actually conduct their actions there in their new institutions, or actually their new capacity working in old institutions, making them healthier. And it's not my assumption. I've seen it many times. I've seen it in Georgia, I've seen it in Ukraine, I've seen it in many other countries. So I think that investment into the digital, but knowledge-driven infrastructure, and when we say digital infrastructure, we not necessarily mean wires. We mean knowledge, we mean people. And people are before all, even with all artificial intelligence, which is, everybody today talks about ChatGPT and all the rest. But I think that also it should be combined. It should not be only the efforts of the government. In developing countries, it should be combined effort of global development agencies like USAID, JSET, SIDA, others. It should be an effort of global development banks like the World Bank, like Islamic Development Bank, Asia Development Bank. Because it's not only money, it's also about competitiveness, it's also about knowledge, it's about expertise. And I think that also what's important is to attract to your country more engineering companies and not like just big vendors. Everybody is chasing, Google, Amazon, and together bring only products. Companies bring to Pakistan global experience tools, developing products for global companies. And just to mention one thing, IT industry in our colleagues, I believe an audience know it better than I do, it actually consists of 2 parts, the technical skills and delivery skills. Technical skills you could obtain by being trained even in YouTube. Delivery skills is your ability to work with international big customers and to bring new experts to the country and to bring new, and something that you couldn't get as a theoretical knowledge. You should obtain it while working with international engineering companies who actually bring the knowledge and train your people in your country. So I think that this is also important. It's true that it creates new competition to existing companies, but still it's something that demonstrates its efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Anatoly. This was very insightful. I think we'll go to the audience now, but I'll just summarize a couple of points Anatoly made. One of them was around technology bringing speed and efficiency. The other thing, which is also very important for countries like Pakistan, but even otherwise, if you think about one thing which has changed the world in the last 10 years, just one thing. You know, there could be many, but if it's one thing that changed the world in the last decade or so, and I'll pick one thing as simplicity. The world has been made simple. Technology and systems handle complexity. You know, you look at all the social media revolution, WhatsApp, now ChatGPT, Twitter, LinkedIn, Spotify, Food Panda, you name it. They are simple to use, but they are very complex at the back end. And Anatoly was speaking about people who have technical skills, but you also need people who can deliver. And that needs loads and loads of experience, not just locally, but internationally as well. So with that, I will open the floor. Kamran, you will take the questions, or? Okay. So if anyone has questions for Anatoly, please ask. Introduce yourself. I'll try and see if Anatoly can hear it. Otherwise, I'll do the interpretation. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Osama Rashid, and I belong to V2F Solutions. We are basically providing services to customers in US, Canada, Middle East. And you mentioned about the scarce dollars in the country. So what I'm worried about, and I think most of the technology companies might be worried as well, is that technology and this internet is our backbone of providing services, and this internet comes from power. And how can we ensure that this power continues to come, and what would be the risk mitigation to ensure that the business continues?
Okay. So Anatoly, did you get the question?
Yeah, but
okay.
What do you mean when you say power?
So
Like
more or less, let's
power.
take it in two ways. One is how will you ensure business continuity in countries like Pakistan, where power may be erratic, and it is in many cases, and internet depends on power. But even otherwise, there are examples of fiber cuts, submarine cable going away, and those kind of things. So how do you ensure business continuity in a world which is so intimately connected?
I think that one of the it's important, the broadband and the access to the when we say power, we mean electricity purely, right? Not government, right? I ask, right?
Yes.
So when we say power, we mean electricity. So that's one of the main aims of working with international financial institutions like the World Bank, who actually provide you with the right infrastructure, and also they know how to measure it and how to provide it. We had this experience in Tajikistan, we had this experience in Uzbekistan, and it's true that with low connectivity, with low connection, with the low speed of internet, it's very challenging to work with international customers. Or if you use the satellite, it becomes maybe not profitable to work with international customers, because it's actually the connection costs you too much. And that's something that we had in the mountains of Tajikistan, a country which is also not far from you. But I think that it should be a systematic work. It should be also, it's your public advocacy working with your government. They should understand that actually investing into the digital infrastructure will generate profits, and it will fill the state budget with more money than they have today, and it will generate experts that have not been generated previously. I absolutely share your concern, and I know that actually it's a limit and it's a blocker when you have an industry with the government. joint efforts with institutions like maybe Islamic Development Bank, Asia Development Bank, big international institution who could provide a loan for 30 years for very low interest rate, but actually their aim is to develop the infrastructure. Without the infrastructure, it's true that you will be not competitive both with your neighbors, but also globally. Today, the digital market is global. If you will not take it, maybe Latin America will take it. So it's true that, but again, if I will be happy, StrategEast is a facilitator, and we're not profit that assists to develop the digital ecosystem or IT ecosystem in different countries in the globe. So I would be happy to exchange the details, and we could discuss. I could put you in touch with people who could provide you with or share their experience, and to do it pro bono, just to see if they could be of help for you.
Thank you, Anatoly. Any other question from the audience? If I may ask, and from my viewpoint, this may be the last question. So we talked about how governments will evolve into the future and how technology will shape the way the governance will be done, how it will impact transparency, how it will mitigate corruption. How do you see organizations and the type of organizations which will come into effect and who are going to be ruling the world in the future? And what sort of future do you see for the corporate culture to evolve as we go into the 2030s and 2040s? Any thoughts around those? Since you are a futurist as well, so I thought it will be good to get some insights on that front.
Thank you for this question. I believe that the future would not be institutionalized. I believe that the future will be more personalized. I think it will be more dispersed, and it will be more about self-organization of the communities of different scale, and it will be up to each one of the individuals which, or maybe which number, and which specifically the institutions he will join. Look, even in the military field, a Russian invasion of Ukraine, Russia invaded as one army, and Ukrainians knew how to self-organize themselves in small groups, and eventually they actually knew how to protect their country, although their army is maybe 5 times, 10 times smaller than Russian one. So I believe that the future is for individuals, and the digital economy or the digital infrastructure, the IT infrastructure allows to everybody to get free access to the information. In those, I always believe that the open system of society will always take over closed one when the access to the information is limited by any authority, it doesn't matter which. Because once you have access to an information, you are actually more competitive. And today, especially when the world becomes digital, it's even more important. Look, when we're talking about China, when Chinese invented the printing and the paper, they were the leader. Once we came to the computers, and the keyboard was not enough or sufficient to include all the hieroglyphs of Chinese language, before the simplified Chinese appeared, China was actually much behind all the rest, right? Once they were able to bring in all the alphabet or the hieroglyphs, simplified Chinese, to one keyboard, they actually started closing the gap, right? So again, getting back to your question, not the institutions, the individuals and the ideas. And actually it would be very challenging for the governments to try to block it, to any governments, Pakistani, USA, France, whoever. So actually we need to come to this future also more responsible as the thought leaders who should actually influence the aims and the goals that those individuals will see as a role model that they want to achieve.
Thank you very much. Anatoly, any last thoughts you want to say before I'll just do a quick summary? Anatoly, any last thoughts before we say goodbye to the audience?
No, I actually thought that you were addressing it to the audience. So thank you very much for having me here today. And again, I believe that that Pakistan, with its aspiration to become a knowledge-driven nation, and I see it, and with aspiration to become a leading and the aspiration for prosperity, I am a true believer that you will succeed. But I also truly believe that actually the worst thing you could do is to try to reinvent the wheel. So what you should try to do is to try to see the global and regional best practices and to try to adopt some or to actually reject others. But also, I would encourage you to try to look for synergies with other countries and to see not only who could become your customer, but also whom together with you could try to struggle to become as a global leader, or at least the most prominent regional hub. And that's something that StrategEast would be happy to assist you with if necessary.
Thank you very much, Anatoly. A great insight. So, look, there is what we call a physical world and there is a digital world. In the future, while in our country or in countries like Pakistan, physical world still dominates the digital world, but that's not how the future is going to be. The future is going to be about digital world dominating the physical world. In 2023, you cannot be building a country for the 1970s. Or likewise, you cannot be building companies for the 1970s. You got to think how companies will look like in 2030. You got to think what will be the type of people and technologies which will be driving the companies of the next decade. And you got to plan now. You got to leave some of the old bad habits of the physical world, which, as Anatoly explained, has its limitation. The digital world emancipates. The digital world liberates. The digital world connects like never before. The digital world maximizes the potential of individual. Hence, he spoke about digital world becoming a lot more personalized than the physical world. And very important that not just people who are associated with technology, but even those who are not, and the decision makers and those who are influencers in this country, they begin to realize that the world of 2030 is going to be very different than the world of 1980 or the 1990s or the 2000. We have tried to build organizations and country in 2023 by thinking about 1980s and 1990s. Did not work, won't work. We got to think 2030 as we decide on the future for ourselves, for our children, for our organizations, and for the country. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Kamran. Thank you.